Welcome to AI for Data. Today I want to ask one question. What is the trajectory of artificial intelligence? Are we slowing down? Are we hitting a lull? Or are we speeding up? And I'd like to argue today that while nobody knows the answer for sure, there is very, very strong reason to believe that we are speeding up. That as fast as things have gone before, that we might be going even faster in the future. Now you might be asking, why? So we're going to start with, this was released yesterday. This is GPT v4 comparing its results versus ChatGPT v3 and v2 and ChatGPT v4. Okay, so the green versus these things. Keep in mind that the light blue was released, I think it was only 6 months ago. And this is a short period of time. And the chart that I'm picking is, in this chart, we're looking at accuracy. Accuracy means it's a factual evaluation in specific categories. So this paper has a lot of graphs in it. This is the one I picked because this is the one thing, well, it's one of the things that was picked out as one of the problems of ChatGPT, which is accuracy, right? Nobody's like, oh, we can't use this thing because it can't pass the bar. You know, I've seen people talk on Twitter about how this thing can pass the bar now, which is cool. But very few people were saying that's why this thing is fundamentally broken. Okay, a lot of people were saying this thing's fundamentally broken because it's making math errors, right, or history errors. So why is it so impressive? In 6 months, ChatGPT has gone from 50% to 80%. That's closing more than half of the gap in one of its core problems. So just looking at this right now, we are definitely not in a deceleration phase, right? They're already working on GPT v5. So belief number one about why we're accelerating is because ChatGPT's growth appears to be accelerating in the ways that matter. Reason number two why I think AI for data tools is accelerating. Because the models are crazy new. This is December 2017. If you've never seen this paper, attention is all you need. It's the most important paper to check out for AI. And this is what LLMs are based on. They're all based on the attention idea, the transformer idea. As far as I know, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. This is the fundamental basis for it. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of different flavors of neural nets. We've had flavors of recurrences and general adversarials and all these things going on. But this specific model is only 6 years old, less than 6 years old, right? Sorry. Yes, less than 6 years old. And there's no belief. There's no one that I've ever talked to in AI that says this is the best. It just is the latest one that works real well. And this is 6 years old. 6 years is nothing. What if another 6 years from now we get another thing that's just as transformative as this? Then absolutely you'd say we're in a state of acceleration. Okay, that's reason two. What's reason three? Huang's law. If you've never heard of Huang's law, it's like Moore's law. If you've never heard of Moore's law is all about how there was exponential increase in CPU processing. I forget the exact number, but basically CPU processing will double every X number of years. And that has tapered off a bit. And some people say it's even stopped, so that CPU processing may have stopped. But GPU processing looks like it might be following exponential growth. Now, it's a little bit tricky because the units aren't exactly the same, but notice that this is a log scale. So if you feel like you can plot a straight line through here, what that means is we have exponential growth. A straight line here would be exponentially growing power. So if you think that, if you think of this, you can think even if the models don't improve, right? Even if OpenAI themselves don't really do a lot more coding, we're still going to get exponentially increasing power on the same models. So just this point alone, I feel like we have to be in a state of acceleration. What's another reason why I'm excited about this? Okay, here is Carmack's idea. I'm explicitly not working with LLMs. So Carmack, if you don't know, he's a very famous graphics programmer, but he is currently working on AI. And he says there are plenty of smart people still doing so. Still, waving hands vaguely, it does feel like the technology could be used to argue with itself and eventually produce a body of knowledge much more coherent than the raw training data. Okay, what is he talking about? He's saying, like, okay, what if you have ChatGPT, and a lot of people did this with 3.5. They would say, can you tell me what was the date that Napoleon fought at Waterloo? Right, this goes back to here, one of these history errors, right? And ChatGPT would give an answer that sounds super plausible and is completely wrong. And then they would have it argue with itself. They'd say, okay, ChatGPT, that feels wrong. You know, can you correct yourself? And ChatGPT would go, oh, I'm sorry. It's very apologetic. I'm sorry, that was way off. You know, let me tell you correct answer. And so it would argue with itself. And so he's saying like, well, why don't we just make that automated? Why don't we have it argue with itself as a part of its training set? And if you're not into AI, that might sound crazy. But that's basically what AlphaZero did with chess. That was Google's chess bot that is the best chess player in the world currently, I believe. And what they did is instead of it looking over pre-played games, because there's limited amount of those, and you know, lots but limited, they had it play itself, and it learned against itself. And so there's a problem here, right? There's a very obvious problem of what is the objective function of talking, right? Because the objective function of chess is obvious. There's a winner or a loser or a tie, but there's a process to evaluate the outcome. What's the process to evaluate the outcome of a conversation? I don't know, right? So this may not work, but it's a reasonable idea. And I want to say that it's a reasonable idea among a class of ideas that could 10x the models. And so this is if you assume there isn't a GPU increase. You know, this would require more training time, but not necessarily more processing power, at least per minute. This wouldn't require a new model. You could do this with transformers, and this wouldn't require OpenAI with a lot of development time. Someone else could do this. Okay, so this alone might lead us to believe that we are in a state of acceleration. What's the next reason why I believe we might be in a state of acceleration? Investments. I mean, if you're all connected to the VC world, venture capital world, you know that they are pivoting hard to AI. And so what we're looking at here is a chart of number of deals on this axis and amount of funding in the bar chart on generative AI. This is just generative AI. And it doubled in 2022 compared to 2021, which was the highest point before. And so, you know, OpenAI may not succeed in the future. We don't know. They're still young. GPUs may not take off. They may hit scaling problems. The Carmack-like ideas of arguing with itself, none of those may work, and we may not get any transformer model. But even just the idea of this much money going into it is going to create so many new use cases. You know, I look at ChatGPT and the functionality is incredible, but there's a lot of like weird edge cases, and those could be fixed with just, you know, product work. Just be like, okay, let's have a PM who goes in and says, interviews in the UX team, and they go in and they interview people and they say, what do you use this for? Oh, okay, we can pre-train that thing. You know, just general product work. So I think from this alone, I could also argue we're in a state of acceleration. The final one is that language models aren't the only game in town. You know, a lot of people will say, well, okay, where's the acceleration in automated driving? And I would say there actually is a lot of work going on automated driving. You know, this on here is the number of papers affiliated with pedestrian detection. And so what's going on is there's all these AI fields that we don't see that are making quiet improvements that maybe are just above linear. But this is still a lot. And so if you look at all these arguments, and even if one of them is persuasive, I think then you have to grant that there is a good chance that we are actually accelerating in the next few years and decade into AI development. And so if you think about all the things that have come out recently, you know, we've got the Midjourneys, we've got the OpenAIs, and a whole set of other tools that have come out, and then you think, well, okay, there's probably some good reason to believe that these are going to go faster and develop even more than they have in the past. I think you got to sit down and ask yourself, what comes next?